why is there League? I'm so glad you asked. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be watching Vars the Third, the absolute homie, the man, the myth, the legend, makes great content. You know, after you subscribe to my channel, go to his channel and click one of these bad boys. Let us watch why people are fans of low-tier characters in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It's because League of Legends, of course. That's the only thing that makes sense.
At scale esports like League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Valorant, Fortnite, and whatnot, teams and organizations go to great lengths to analyze, calculate, strategize, and plan out the most effective tactic and approach to victory they can come across. Huge amounts of capital and manpower are invested into finding the easiest and most assured route line to winning. Understandable, seeing as potentially millions of dollars in prize money are on the line, let alone the sheer marketability your team and brand get from
I have literally no idea what this guy is talking about, but there's two reasons why people play low tiers. One, they're almost always the fan favorite. Not always, usually the fan favorite. Also, they're gimmicky. People don't know how to fight your character, and that's how you get the edge on people, because you can't actually be better than them. That's why you play ZSS? Precisely, yes.
It's also the most practical thing to do. Competitive games offer a feeling of reward for those who win and a feeling of disappointment for those who lose. It stands to reason, pragmatically, you're incentivized to pick a strong character or play towards a sound win condition. Smash Ultimate's one of the few esports I know of that goes against that fundamental notion. Across the top 100 ranked players, unsurprisingly,
that's the worst character so far. Of the entire list, this is the worst character, and that's still the case.
You're gonna find many of the
and on this row, it's still the case.
Best characters
and on this row, it's still the case.
Game like Steve,
oh, I see Inkling,
Rob, Game & Watch, Snake, and Sonic. But in spite of that, there's a considerable number of players who choose to main characters that are far from the top of the tier list, potentially even at the bottom half.
Well, that's why they're not even past the top 50.
Even
because they play dog.
Though Ultimate's esports scene is nowhere close to the big box multi-million-dollar games, the same amount of effort and detail is given attention to here by its players. So why is it that a huge number of top-level contenders intentionally play bottom, low, and mid-tiers in Smash? That'll be our discussion topic for today. Top Smash players' penchants for meaning quote-unquote bad characters has always been fascinating to me. As someone with a long history playing League and watching the pro scene there, you would be publicly executed if you were crazy enough to play a champion with a negative win rate.
That's crazy. League players are also #1 haters, so I've got to imagine you get called some terrible things if you play your favorite guy.
On occasion, people will actively go out of their
Mars talking about some top 50 as if he's ranked this season. Hey! I beat a top 20 ranked player most likely, maybe top 10, alright? So but you shut your mouth, alright? I've done my time. I was ranked. What are you doing?
But in Smash Ultimate, people dedicate so much of their tournament career and time pushing the limits of what's humanly possible with the character, even if public opinion arrives at a consensus that said character is bad. If we were to take a look at the top 100 players of Ultimate in the most recent Lumi rank, obviously like I said before, there's going to be a trend towards the best characters being at the top.
Excuse me, are A tier or above? I mean, like, come on, Zero Suit's not A tier, guys. Come on, get her out of there. She doesn't deserve it. Like, bro, Mega Man's not A tier. Blow me with that one, Jesus Christ.
Spargo, Mia, Aquila, Light, Sonics, Raru, Shuton, Leo, Ashimo, and Tweak. Besides Ashimo and Raru, all players in the top 10 main or co-main a top 10 character. Even 11 through 20 for the most part also consists of primarily top and high tiers. The funny thing is, when you start going through 21 through 50, which keep in mind is still a very impressive placement to be, especially worldwide, you start to run into cast members that would be far from most people's first choice for a long-term main. You have Zero Suit Samus, Hero, Falco, Ice Climbers, Mega Man, Inkling, Toon Link for crying out loud. Obviously, people don't lend as much credence to top 51 through 100, but for my money, being in the top 100 in a global scene of upwards of 20,000 unique players is definitely something to brag about. It's here where we find a much more varied cast.
Yeah, dude, this tier list is insane. Mega Man is B tier, Young Link is B tier. I think Lucina being this low is an actual crime.
Like Greninja and Lucina, they're not that far down the tier list to be seen as unreasonable to main. But like I said, unlike League of Legends, where you can more or less play multiple champions at a competitive level using fundies and a bit of practice, for Smash characters you have to dedicate pretty much your whole life understanding and mastering just one.
Damn, look at all those solo mains. Noobs. Wait a minute. Wait.
Interestingly enough, though, low-tier heroes as they're called often develop extremely fervent cult followings throughout the Smash community, even going so far as to being celebrated for their character choice. Using a tier 3 rogue deck in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, I guess people do kind of celebrate low-tier players, which is why I have so many fans, huh? Interesting.
For example, we'll have all of Twitch chat making fun of you for being stupid. But for some reason in Smash, whenever they see a low tier going up against a top player, it's as if a switch goes off and everyone's viscerally cheering for that low tier player to win. That got me thinking about the differences in Smash Ultimate's environment compared to other competitive titles. There are 3 factors responsible for why people intentionally choose to play low tiers in this game. The first being the overall spirit of Ultimate and the Smash Bros scene in general.
We're sick of top tiers. That's really what it comes down to.
This may sound incredibly corny, but part of what makes Smash Bros so unique is how enduring it is as a community. Considering it's one of the few tournament scenes that's not only not backed by the developer, but that developer in question is actively making efforts to shut down the competitive scene, for it to have lasted as long as it has been is a testament to the community's determination against adversity. Smash in its entirety is no stranger to challenge in overwhelming circumstances, potentially unfair ones, yet in spite of that, it still pushes forward in the hopes of proving everyone wrong. Where other scenes are all about proving things right, Smash is the opposite. It's all about breaking expectations.
But it's not entirely true though. He showed play bad players get good results. That's like hardly true. I hate that Spargo exists because he's just completely like disproving anything I say about hating on low tiers, you know?
Hero or low seed player go up against one of the favorites to win the tournament and usually their top tier main. That underdog spirit embodies the vast majority of people. Anecdotally, much as I'm a Cola fan like everyone else, watching the set with him against Ball at Kagaribi was one of the highlights of the whole event for me. The idea of King K. Rool making a big enough impact at the most stacked event in Smash Bros. History sounds like a more exciting headline than Aquila taking the whole event, right?
True. Remember, I remember watching Cola versus Ball like live. Do you guys remember how hard I was cheering for Cola, dude? I'm so anti-low tier and anti-upset. Like, obviously it was a great set to like watch and like it's more exciting the way it went, but I wanted Cola to win.
That David and Goliath narrative is how storylines are formed and people make breakout runs. For every major, Echo Stats makes an upset thread, and without fail, it's always those upset factor 7s or higher that get the most likes, retweets, and people screaming "that's my goat" in their replies. People live for upsets because they're not the expectation. While technically a matchup between two top tiers and two top players, MK Leo vs Hurt at Gamo was so hyped to watch because all things considered, Leo was at a disadvantage going into it, by all accounts.
Leo was going into a disadvantage versus Hurt? I don't know about that one, Chief.
Most people were expecting Hurt to win, so when Leo clutched it out with a moment reminiscent of Vivo 2019, the crowd exploded. People always enjoy seeing the underdog win. That extends to characters too. Even if Toriguri and another top player have the same skill level through some arbitrary estimation, Toriguri is playing a bad character, so he has to inherently put far more effort to win the set. Everyone's a Beast Mode Paul fan because for the longest time ever, Hero was thought of as unviable, so the idea of someone coming in and top 8ing majors with them is that same spirit of trying to prove the status quo wrong, that Hero can do it despite his weaknesses. It's not unreasonable to think at least some part of that excitement of trying to win with a character many perceive as unviable is the desire to prove otherwise. Second factor would be personal agency. What makes fighting games unique is that next to maybe shooters, it might be the most player skill oriented genre out there. That is, how you use it takes far more precedence than what you use. You could be playing the best character in the world and lose to a Ganondorf player if that person's better than you.
He got his bubble pop, bro. That's embarrassing. I think we have to do away with the idea that low tiers are hard to play. Yeah, he did say something along the lines of like, oh, he's playing a worse character, so he inherently has to work harder. That is just not really true at all. We'll take Zero Suit for example, right? Ganon's win condition is to like stuff my jump with Nair and like parry my aerials. And like meanwhile, my win condition is to mix up all of my aerial timings, take risky grabs so that he's not comfortable in shield, execute combos that use like the entirety of my kit, whereas he is just nairing into grabbing into down throwing into nairing. It's not hard to play a lot of low tiers. In fact, that simplicity is what makes them bad characters a lot of the time. And that's why I don't like low tiers, because they're generally pretty boring. There are some, you know, outliers, right? Where like Banjo is one of those, like, he's a good character, I think at this point. I think people are widely accept that he is a good character. But he's extremely hard to play while not being the best character, you know? Difficulty to play should never, well, rather, it never equals viability. Cloud is an extremely easy character to play, and he's broken. Like, you know? Characters that force you to play their game will always, always, always have a leg up on the competition because they are playing the same matchup almost every time they play. You know what I mean? Like, when you fight against a Steve, they put the wall up, and it's like, okay, they have to deal with my wall. I don't care what they're doing. I just have to either throw out like an option to punish them for hitting the wall or jumping over the wall. And that is how 99% of matchups play out. This obviously, I'm saying 99 because there are some outliers in there and there's some difficulties.
Don't get me wrong, matchups do matter, but even the worst matchups in the world have some measure of input from the disadvantaged player. If you're caught in a losing matchup in a game like League, some matchups are so brain dead easy that a gold or silver player can beat a diamond player with even a modicum of practice and awareness. In Smash, however, the onus of skill is way bigger. Compared to past titles which have a clear cutoff point between viable and unviable, Ultimate is the closest we've ever had to a balanced roster in the sense that the gap between the worst character in the game versus the best character is a lot more narrow.
That is true, that some people don't consider is even though they're considered low tiers, it's not that far. If you ranked a character on a scale from like 0 to 100, and Steve is like a 100 because he's the best character in the game, I would say a character like Pit is probably like a 75.
Every character is obviously graded in relation to one another, with Steve being the reference point at the top and Ganondorf being the reference point at the bottom. There's one thing about the tier list that you might notice is different in this game compared to past games in Smash: how high everyone is ranked. For example, if we were to look at Smash 4, the cutoff from C tier, which most would consider the mid tier, is around the halfway point, 29th place out of 54. Most characters under that are for the most part considered low tier. Half the roster being below the halfway point makes a lot of sense. But if you were to look at Ultimate's cutoff from C tier, we get a completely different story. The cutoff point is at 71st place before it goes into D tier, meaning...
I know people were like talking about this loosely, but people were like, the Smash tier list doesn't make any sense because mid tier should have the most amount of characters. Right? There has to be a middle of the pack where characters lie, but that's just not true. I think most characters are just pretty good, and it's like so player skill dependent that I can't reasonably put them in mid tier.
Low tier represents less than a fifth of all characters, far smaller of a size than expected. So while in relativity the inflection point from mid to low tier would begin around Captain Falcon, in objectivity the inflection point from mid to low tier begins at Marth, with everyone above him being considered mid tier or better. Where I'm getting at with this is that even the quote-unquote low tiers in this game are sufficiently good enough in a vacuum to allow the player to make up for the difference through skill alone. It's not like Melee Bowser, Brawl Ganondorf, or Smash 4 Jigglypuff where I have not one iota of a clue how they can even think about taking on Melee Fox, Brawl Meta Knight, and Smash 4 Bale respectively. Those have to be easily -4 matchups. True, Ganondorf and Little Mac are up a creek without a paddle against Steve and Sonic, but not counting say bottom 5 of the roster, K. Rool for example by comparison is only about 3 times worse than Steve. A character like Pit's 2/3 the rating of Game & Watch. So Zachary taking out Mia, while still a monumental achievement, is 100% within the realm of possibility character-wise. Smash Ultimate's a game where the overwhelming majority of characters are good enough to where it comes down to player execution. A B, C, or even D tier character beating an A or S tier doesn't seem too far out of the equation in this game the way it is in past titles, because even the C and D tier characters have things you have to respect no matter what. K. Rool has access to powerful projectiles and belly armor, Ike has great range and strong kill confirms off neutral air, Piranha Plant has incredible trapping and extremely strong vertical moves. Even Little Mac, who by all accounts should be non-existent as a character, must be respected, and he's the second worst in the game. In essence, you can make low tiers work in this game through skill. Mind you, this is very much a talent beats hard work if talent works hard scenario. In this case, the character is the talent and the player is the hard work. If two players put in the same amount of work and one is playing Steve while the other is playing Lucario, then obviously the Steve player will win 10 out of 10 times. But talent's a force multiplier. A person could still beat someone playing a better character by being better skill-wise. Now, am I implying low tier heroes are more skilled than a player in the same rank as them but with a better character?
No.
Not necessarily. There are still elements like matchup checks on whether or not you have a winning or losing matchup to look out for, but there's still an aspect of execution you have to give players like Toriguri, Level 1, Mild Chill, and whatnot some credit to. Final one's of course personal preference. Seeing as Smash is a crossover title, every single cast member save for Game & Watch and Rob have a home series they originate from. Pokemon, Fire Emblem, Kirby, Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Minecraft, Sonic, Final Fantasy, Mother, Animal Crossing, the list goes on and on. People naturally have a soft spot for a certain character and their playstyle resonates with them here. Some people find the derpiness of a low tier to be really endearing. Some may even attribute joining the Smash community because of the character they play. I personally chose Cloud because he's one of my favorite characters in Final Fantasy next to Lightning and Noctis. On that front, it can also
Dude loves his anime sword characters, you gotta give it up.
Be as a result of one's tenure with the character. For veterans of Smash, the player might have simply just played them back in the day. Light, for example, joined in Smash 4 and played Fox, so it makes sense that he would pick up Fox again in Ultimate. Debuzz was a Brawl player and picked up Olimar back then, who he has stuck with entering Smash 4 and then into Ultimate, picking up Rosalina on the side. Things obviously change from game to game, whether a character gets buffed or nerfed, but the overall essence of the character likely stays the same, and so it just comes off as the intuitive thing to do. Smash is unique in that way. For most of the esports, the characters or tools in which you do battle are from the games they came from, so there might be more of a bias towards practicality over personal sentiment. People of course play whoever feels best on them in any game.
I chose Joker because he's broken and awesome and cool. That's awesome. Dude, love that reasoning. Sick. You don't need any. You already had so many reasons. I'm glad that you had more. I think low tiers in this game are more weird than bad. I think that's a good way to phrase it, to be honest. Some of them are just straight bad, though. Like, there are some that you just look at that character and you're like, you were not dealt a full hand, buddy. I'm sorry to say. You just Sakurai did not give you anything.
Fatality scored by Captain Falcon all the way back in Project M when he was fresh out of high school. Now he's 30 years old. That's a huge length of time to stick to one character. At a certain point, the character becomes a part of you. No doubt the low-tier heroes of today share a similar bond with their characters.
I hate that he said that, bro. That means I f with Zero Suit. And that means I'm picking Zero Suit in the next game. God damn it, dude.
It's not just endemic to low tiers either. It's no coincidence most of the best Steve players in the world are really young. They grew up playing Minecraft. Conveniently for them, Steve's overpowered as shit, but the point is, even if it comes at the expense of practicality, players will choose the character they enjoy playing the most, or the character that resonates best with them. It would be nice if we could get a game where everyone's balanced and equal to each other so that everyone could play who they like and not have to compromise results. But if it has to be one or the other, ultimately it will be whoever best represents them. To me, that's what keeps Ultimate exciting to watch and play even after all this time. Seeing low and mid-tier characters push through their perceived limits and prove to everyone that even the so-called unviable characters can be viable has made watching top 64s at majors invigorating. Granted, top 8s are usually the typical Steve, Sonic and stuff, but who knows, maybe one of these days the low-tier heroes could do the impossible. Anyway though, that's gonna wrap things up for me today. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my points or do you believe it's something else? You're welcome to share in the comments down below. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at VarsFam, join my Discord server.
Shoutouts to Vars for making good content. So yeah, low tiers, guys. Who's your favorite low tier? All right, my favorite low tier. Haha, just kidding, hee hee. I don't even want to play that shit. It's so bad. Well, actually, the video was why do people play low tiers? Some of them are genuinely fun. There are some bad characters out there that are just fun. I don't think Plant is one of them. Spargo, for some reason, says this is the character he has the most fun with, and I really couldn't tell you why. But like my favorite low tier, I really don't know. It really depends on like my mood that day. Monkey? I'd say he's like mid-tier before I'd say he's low tier, but trash. I low-key really like playing Doc. I hate that he kind of just devolves into pill spam. See, this is one of those situations though where I have to work harder than this guy. I didn't mean to directional air dodge. Supposed to do neutral. Anyway, yeah, so that was the tier difference if I've ever seen one. And that's the part about playing low tiers that nobody shows you. That's why not a lot of people play low tiers. You gotta say though, in its own way, it is very impressive to lose Steve versus Dr. Mario. One block just did that? Jesus Christ. Get up, lid. Got him. I do like the little low tier tricks that they have though. Ledge canceling wizard kick. It's just possible for some reason. What about character based rankings, like how you're the supposed best CSS? This is one stock 7 minutes, brother. What the hell are you doing? You're dead. Aren't you okay, I thought he rage quit. Oh, he did? No? Okay. Why would you queue into a one stock 7 minute match? Dude, he lost in 14 seconds. That's it. That's the low tier video. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one. Bye.